Well, I like to say, listen to the market first and foremost. So I don't try to invent anything and then just sell it because that's more complex. So what the market was telling us in the late 2000 teens, when I had taken over our client accounting practice, if you will, and we were growing in our firm size by acquisition, both organically and through acquisition. So we had a lot of, smaller firms that we were purchasing, and that created a lot of different users or different BCFOs or different people acting as advisors throughout the firm in a different fashion. And the market was telling us through about every avenue, including our clients, that they wanted more forecasting, they wanted more insight, and they wanted more advisory than just telling us what happened. One of my favorite quotes is clients will pay you more to predict the future than to record the past. And that had kind of really set in. So it's 2017, 2018 really kind of took over in 2019. All of this was happening generally at the same time as client accounting everybody was adding the A, up to from CAS, 1.0 to 2.0. So it went from CAS to CAS, and everybody's talking about advisory. So from a practicality perspective, it made sense as well for us. Instead of having, 50 advisors or 10 or 5 or however many it was about 25 of them at the time in our firm that were, CPAs acting as a CFO or a BCFO in that advisory world. And so we said, well, instead of just doing it from a tax return perspective, why don't we do it from a monthly perspective? And so we'll take all the write-off work that we were doing, and instead of doing it at the end of the year, let's do it in a monthly fashion. And invent this, I'm just listening to smart people tell me how to do it. Brought that advisory into the firm, got that figured out from a monthly perspective and reporting perspective. And then we set off on the journey to include that forecasting that we always had, but it was always in somebody's, spreadsheet. Right. So if you had 25 advisors acting as BCFOs, you had at least 25 different ways of creating a cash flow model. And if you picked that up, let's just say somebody was sick and their client needed advice, right? Or they were on vacation, it doesn't matter. Or I like to say got hit by the proverbial beer truck, right? Or retired. You would have to pick up that model and then try and figure out and understand what the advisory was that was happening and being created in the fashion that they were most comfortable or most familiar with creating. So he said, well, this is not a replicable model. And so I set out at that point in time to then find technology to allow the firm to provide the advisory services, the future forecasting, the budgeting, cash flow, predictive analysis and modeling in a similar fashion, in a similar way. And that's how we landed on Giraffe after quite a long period of investigating and testing and, trying different ways of doing things. And it done was, I think most firms, or quite a few firms, we were a top 50 firm. I would venture to say most, if not all the firms in the top 100 had people acting as advisors. So, the whole narrative around, oh, nobody's doing advisory, they're just providing, tax returns. I don't think that was necessarily the way that things were working, but people were doing it on their own very independently, working with their clients and their best clients and going out and meeting those clients on a year-end basis. I think a lot of that was going on. And what we had done, around Giraffe and using the technology is we provided those advisors with the ability to do more and do more often, instead of having a person, CPA, who'd been around for a long time and had a long, illustrious career with a few clients. We needed more of that for all of our clients. And so what we did is we created the business intelligence and analytics team. And those are, like, say, the young smart kids coming out of college that had all of that, technology background and using the technology. Whereas those of us who have been around longer, and had the old pen and pencil and the green visors and the squares on the sheets and creating our Excel was about as sophisticated as it got. we created a team of super users that were able to create all of the data in the technology, Giraffe, and then produce it for the advisor in a fashion that they wanted to see it done. And so we kind of created this ordering up mentality, which allowed the advisors to digest the information and then work with the clients more, producing more revenue, more client satisfaction, higher level of value through the people who knew and understood business because of their careers, while also giving our younger staff the opportunity to work with those people directly in learning how to create these sophisticated models. And you'll work with those clients in a fashion that they were asking to be worked with instead of just transactional. Nothing ever goes precisely as planned, but the clients that invest in themselves, not just financially, but actually come to the table and want to learn about what's going on, are obviously the best. I mean, I'm not telling you anything new here, but you can't just inject a technology, roll out a report to them and expect them to have any idea what it means. You can't just do it and then send them a bill and say, you're welcome, because they don't like that. And I've tried all of these things. What we found is Giraffe is the best technology for us. And I do think it for firms, because it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty intuitive, and it works. It's so customizable, really, with a standardized platform that it works in about every business that you're looking to install it with. Now, there's differing levels of reporting. And so it looks different. That was something that was a little bit challenging. It's like, okay, well, these reports are far better. They're far more intuitive, but they don't look like the spreadsheet, that everybody was used to. So we had to get clients past that. And they do, right? Budgeting. Well, you can't provide a forecast if there is no budget. And it's shocking how many clients just don't have budgets. Even, larger clients, though they have the old gut feel like, well, we need to write that down. We need to put it into a program. And then we need to provide you with a couple of different models. You can't do modeling if you don't have a base budget. So with more complex advisory, you have to think differently in the training of the client of what it takes to actually give the advisory. All businesses want to yell, I want more advisory. Well, that's a journey. That's not just an immediate destination. So you've got to kind of change the mindset on how you're doing things as well with them. We've been on the Giraffe journey 4.5 years now. It's overwhelmingly successful, and we continue to grow. So once you kind of established what you're going to do, you're going to set the precedence that your clients should expect, the level of reporting that Giraffe can produce. And the clients start coming to you because they understand that's the level that they're going to get. And now we're using it across just about every client that we have in multiple different areas and different business lines that we never really been expected that we would be using it. I think that's about what it is with every technology. You can't just plug it in and expect it to work, send it off to the client, and they're going to have any idea what it even means. That happens in some cases, don't get me wrong, but it's limited. And what we found, actually, I think this is a good story and very anecdotal, where we rolled out, with a couple hundred licenses to every client that we had in a test group. And what they wanted was more of the advisory that came with it. We found actually very little acceptance if you just gave it to them to look at. And we monitored these things. So if you gave a client a license, you gave them the reporting, more than half the time, probably 90% of the time, I forget the numbers, they didn't even look at it. They'd click into it, click around a little bit and be out of there in seconds. And we could see this behind the scenes. But when we would bring in that advisor to talk to them about it, then the adoptance was huge. The numbers were close to 100%. And we also found then, when the advisor would leave the relationship because of costs, there's costs to having these advisors talking with you monthly, the clients stopped using the technology again then too. So You've really got to bring the technology with the advisory, somebody that's able to talk with it, and then bring that strategic advice to the client. Otherwise, very low usage on their own. You can run a report on anything, but if the data is trash, what's the point? And you need to have somebody that's able to identify if your data is any good. Okay, so your monthly accounting has to be correct. Bad data in is bad data out, and you've got a crappy report. And if that report is telling you, let's just say that it's a fantastic report, but nobody's analyzing that, okay, and able to identify categories that are just from a business perspective completely out through, the history, through the business experience that they've got, and that affects, or let's say that because of that bad data, a business owner makes a decision based on that. That could be a poor decision. Now you've got problems. They're just blaming the technology. And we heard that time and time again. So if you just roll this out to somebody who doesn't know how to use it, or create a budget, or create a forecast, or read a forecast, or identify if, days on AR are way out of line and cash on hand isn't all correct, then they're just making bad decisions, and you've got a completely worthless report. So I guess really the point here is, by using the technology, which is not all that expensive, the multiplier on getting good technology, the multiplier on getting Giraffe in the door and having people be able to use it for the advisors and then become advisors themselves, the multiplier on the revenue and thus then the value to the client is exponential. Meaning you got to figure, like, look, I do things the way I like to do things until I'm forced to do them differently. And I'm not an easy person to force to do things differently. Neither is anybody else, really, especially in this world. You've got long-standing, right, CPAs and advisors who have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. To just go in and show them a new way of doing it, and then tell them that it's better than the way that they've been doing it, show them that it's better than the way that they've been doing it, and expose errors in the ways that they've been doing it does not go well. And I still fight that to this day. We've had people come and go very high level in various areas. And the new people that come in that I can finally bring the technology to is like, aha, there was a lot of cutting and pasting going on in this old Excel spreadsheet. And there's no cutting and pasting, obviously, in a Giraffe world, or, more sophisticated technology world. And the results are, again, exponentially better. But that is the hardest thing to get by, is to just show that there's a different way. And you know what? It actually is a better way. Then getting people to just trust somebody else to use the technology for them, or show them the technology to produce a report in a different fashion. It says the same or better, right? But it looks different. So now you kind of, you got to work through those things, but a lot of cosmetic differences. And then once you get over the hill of compiling data and looking at it differently, it's a winning strategy. Everybody that comes in the door now in the VCFO world is trained on Giraffe, is trained on the business intelligence and analytics team. And it's just part of the program now. We're not changing any mindsets. The mindsets change, and everybody that's new that rolls in here, quite frankly, doesn't have a choice. This is how we do it. I think we started with something, I know it was less than 10 licenses. Let's go with 6, because I think that was really it. And 6 power users, and all of them didn't adopt it right away either. I think we're at over 200, 250, maybe 300 licenses now in some of the very complex clients that we've got. I mean, we rolled in Giraffe and built, I think, something to like 15,000 lines of budget, which is insane. I wouldn't recommend anybody doing that. It's not built to do that. We broke the system. Giraffe told us not to, tried it anyway, but you don't need to do that, even though some clients wanted to. The real success that we've got are the clients that have no idea what they even want, except they know that it's a report, it's a budget, you know, forward reporting level type stuff. That's always a really good scenario. We've got a charter school group right now that's adopted this because of the old school way of producing these reports. And I can even a monthly report. I mean, we produce all of our monthly reporting of Giraffe now too. So let's just use a QuickBooks instance. Instead of pushing out a QuickBooks, we run it through Giraffe and push it out Giraffe. There's a cost to everything. So, this whole mindset around advisory and changing the name to everything, and that's 2.0, and everybody needs an advisor. Sure. But not everybody's willing to pay for it. So we're seeing this. I don't know if it's a shift in the market, but there are plenty of clients that still just want their books done accurately and monthly. Then you kind of got to gradually grow them into the other services that you offer. So those are the difficult ones. They don't care. They own a single location shop. It's $1,000 a month and you get, a nice complex bookkeeping scenario, but they don't want the advisory, and they don't particularly care if they have a budget or, but they don't care. It's really hard to move them into carrying. The other side of the coin is the ones that do have reports, like board reporting. Like I said, that's a great client. Or they've got, an active owner CEO up in the, 5, 10 plus $1 million companies. They love these things, and they love the interconnective ability of Giraffe in any of the systems, that they're using. And so real-time data, month-end data, projections, cash flow, cash end dates, run rates, all of those types of things, those clients are easy because that's what they come to you and want. Clients that are struggling, why? If you get a client or a prospect that's in here and has no idea why last year was way better than this year and what's going on. So, well, you don't have a budget. You've never run a scenario. You don't have any idea. You don't have any insight. So you can start there, stabilize what's going on, and then start creating accurate projections instead of making, quite frankly, bad decisions based on one good month. We see that all the time. I'll give you 2 examples. One, I worked with the client for over a year and watched this client insist on spending, I'm not kidding when I say darn near $1 million on a very complex cash flow model based on all of the internet sales in adoption and increased adoption over a period of time and, TikTok and Facebook and all of this stuff. I told him, twice a month, you're wasting your money doing that. We can do that for you. No, brought in multiple CFOs. I said, you don't need to do that. We can do this for you. Quite frankly, your cash flow model is broken. Your projection model is broken. You're getting very bad advice, but no, you wanted Silicon Valley and high dollar people. That company failed. Sorry about that. You shouldn't have done this. And I knew it was going to happen. And unfortunately, they were consumed elsewhere. Now, conversely, we've got a client right now that we stood up a new accounting technology, a little more complex. We added Giraffe into the picture. We brought the BIA team in, and they were not making accurate financial decisions because their projections were wrong. Budget was off, projections were wrong. They were spending money that they shouldn't have been spending. We put that into the system, created a budget in Giraffe. They were creating 100 different reports a month and manipulating the reports from the old way. Giraffe was our new static way of doing things. And instead of creating 100 reports that they couldn't read anyway out of an old system, we've got one. We've got one budget, and we can run multiple scenarios and say, okay, if sales go up this month ahead of schedule or ahead of budget, what does that mean in July when you don't have sales, right? So they know that their sales are seasonal. So instead of having a great September, October, November, blowing all the cash by February and being out of money by July, we're able to put together a thoughtful process and projection where they're like, oh, okay, great. And no longer is the board all upset about not having any dollars because we've injected Giraffe and the advisory and stabilized what's going on. More often it's the thrill of victory. And sometimes you just can't get, people out of their own way because they think by spending more money on flashy consultants, it's not easy to do. It's not as if you can just say we do advisory now because you added another A and instead of client accounting, it's client accounting and advisory. Quite honestly, I changed the name from client accounting to financial accounting advisory services team fast. I think a lot of people in the industry, well, they knew that. They're like, that's interesting. And the acronym was Financial Accounting Advisory Services Team. And we added that advisory, but you have to change the way you're doing things. Okay. So we took a team of, say, about 12 people, changed that mindset. We're now a team of almost 200 people. Okay. And the people that we're bringing in, everybody, you're an advisor first. From the bookkeepers to accounts payable, to the month end, the controllers and the BCFOs, you're an advisor first in every area that you work. So even if you're doing that accounts payable, okay, those people don't generally think of themselves as advisors, but they do here. Okay. So it starts from the beginning of the, accounting function and then rolls the whole way through that BCFO function. That's not easy to do. I think a lot of firms want to do it, and I think individually some places they are doing it. I think there's a lot of specialty firms that are coming out. We're seeing a lot of people coming out of their original jobs to be VCFOs, and there's a lot of where you have a plan, you stick to the plan, you've got the right technology. And again, I'm using Giraffe all over the place, so I think it is the right, recipe. But where if you just dabble in it, then I don't know, you might have a couple of clients, but that's really hard to replicate. And if it's, a single producer, you've only got so much time. And if you don't have technology that you can just continuously pound out these reports and ensure that they're accurate, then you're never going to be able to scale it. You got 300 licenses and I run a $38 million accounting practice in our firm. It better be the right one, but it is where it is. I like to fail fast and I would have moved on if it wasn't. So, without a doubt, it's adopted and approved by the AICPA. It's easy to use. You've got to obviously buy into it and you've got to have a dedicated champion. You got to have a team around it, but that's the same with every technology. It doesn't cost too much. It's really well priced in the marketplace, and you don't have to have an entire team of technologists just to make the thing work. So you can have accountants, you can have CFOs, you can have CPAs. They understand it. The technology is already built there. So yeah, it is the platform that we've adopted and will continue to use going into the future. So from a technology support, I expect technology to be difficult early on. And no matter what, we ask a question or advise on something that needs to be done, from a user interface or whatever it is. And I mean, it's either done on the next rollout or it's fixed right away or, whatever we need to make happen is what happens. And I think that's good for the accounting industry too, because I don't think we're coming up with some wild stuff that's done at creative planning any differently than anybody else is. So from an accounting industry perspective, I know we're all providing input and Jirav is taking that very seriously and, making the adoptions that they need to. I guess I would just, again, encourage anyone, and I say this all the time, it's just through the use of technology. There's the initial rollout, there's a secondary rollout, and then there's, betterifications that I call it sometimes that, I can't wait to see what phase 3 and 4 look like because I know the roadmap is really exciting. And some of the things that take a little bit longer to do to make it look cooler and reporting and colors and this and that are on the way. So I can't wait to see what this looks like in the next generation.